Hello. For those of you who I've not had the opportunity to meet yet, my name is Dennis Lane and I'm the National Director of AFS Interculture South Africa. Today, I want to talk about some of the changes that AFS in South Africa is going through and the new strategy that we're putting in place to drive strategic change. Our programmes have gone through some tough times over the past years, and we made a concerted effort to increase our numbers. We were successful in doing that, but the increased numbers led to a decrease in quality. But we've been changing things around since the end of last year, and quality has been improving. During 2014, the number of active volunteers has increased by 72.5%, and that's already feeding into the way we're able to deliver our programmes. We also achieved 100% of participants placed on our global database within the 3-week deadline for the past 2 cycles, and that is a really good sign. Also, the feedback from participants completing their exchanges has been very encouraging in relation to their experiences in South Africa, and the number of support cases has reduced, and our handling of them has been commended. So, looking forward to a strategic approach, we began this year with a strategic focus document in place that outlined the direction of travel in programmes, funding and volunteer development, and some of the key goals, but it didn't lay out a way of how we were going to get there. Over the past months, a broader strategic change strategy has been developed. The overall strategic change strategy is made up of a number of specific strategies and plans aimed at addressing the full range of operations within AFS in South Africa. First of all, we have the 2017 goals to reach Vision 2020. These are network-wide, and we'll be working to achieve them in the same way as the rest of the network partners around the world. We then have 6 areas of work we are putting in place in South Africa, and I'll outline each of them in a moment. We have the change-making approach, a quality improvement plan, volunteer development strategy, program development plan, a fundraising strategy, and a media and communication strategy. Looking at how the 6 areas all fit together, at the base of everything are the volunteers and staff who will be implementing all the different pieces of work. Then, the first foundation to strategic change is a focus on change-making. The vision is that AFS Interculture South Africa will be a leading change-making organisation working towards a more just and peaceful South Africa. That everyone, volunteers, participants, community organisations and staff will have their inner change-maker liberated, so that programmes will be better grounded in the needs of AFS partner communities. And the outcomes that we're looking for are in 3 ways. First of all, personally, that everybody involved with AFS will become confident, positive activists for change. Then, looking at the organisation, that this new approach will generate more enthusiasm across the country from volunteers and staff, and that having linked programmes, which means having the school programme, the community-based programmes, and the things that the individual chapters are doing with the community, all working together, will position AFS as a leading change-making organisation in South Africa. And then looking more broadly, we're aiming that communities will work together to improve their lives, change society for the better, and promote real justice and peace for all in South Africa. And having communities having a better understanding of each other. The second foundation is quality. And we'll be looking at 4 areas. First of all, on planning performance, where we're talking about setting strategy and planning activities. So, for example, what approach will we take in order to make the biggest contribution to other people's efforts to improve their lives and communities? On planning activities, one example is that we'll be developing activity plans in discussion with chapters and other stakeholders, identifying who would have to do what to achieve specific goals. Then we have measuring performance, where we're looking at feedback and scope, managing relationships and technical quality. We'll put in place a system to measure how we're contributing to the planned improvement to lives and communities. We will systematically build and monitor relationships between chapters and the National Office, between chapters and schools and the local community organisations, and between South Africa and other AFS partners. Two key areas to focus on will be communications and commitment meeting. And we'll systematically monitor the technical quality of our work and ensure that it meets appropriate standards. Looking at managing performance, we have staff and volunteers and continual improvement. The National Office's first priority should be to support and encourage volunteers to deliver effective programmes on the ground. Systems should be put in place in order to enable volunteers to take on administrative and programme delivery roles where appropriate. That will improve the technical quality of the work. And AFS in South Africa needs to create an organisational culture of continual improvement and put in place systems that free staff and volunteers to allow them to take ownership of processes and support them to deliver better quality services. And finally, we have communicating performance, where we're looking at transparency, ethical fundraising, and learning. First of all, we'll put in place a system for sharing information, in line with confidentiality requirements, that will enable all relevant staff and volunteers to learn from issues that arise during the delivery of programmes. On fundraising, we need to be confident in approaching funders. However, it is important to systematically check that our claims are ambitious but realistic. We shouldn't raise unrealistic expectations in funders that put undue pressure on staff and volunteers. And then finally, AFS in South Africa should collaborate in a collective effort to continually improve performance and the effective use of resources across the sector, and use various routes to feedback learning to other partners, for example, the World Cafe and communities of practice. And it's important to remember that this is a cycle and not a one-off piece of work. We'll be continually working on improving quality. Then the third foundation is volunteer development. What we're doing is using the volunteer journey, which is a system which has been put together across the AFS network and is made up of 7 different stages. First of all, we have awareness, which is about raising the profile of AFS through giving the current chapters and volunteers the tools to engage more potential volunteers, but also raising the profile of AFS through school visits and holding mall drives and being present at school open days, forming relationships with other entities, for example churches. Once we've raised the awareness, then we can get to invitation, where we are going to be providing support to chapters and volunteers on how to invite people to join AFS. For example, by inviting potential volunteers to a chapter event, such as an outing or an orientation. Also, we'll be looking at reconnecting with alumni, both South African AFSers and expats in South Africa who were AFSers, and inviting them to become involved in supporting AFS. Then we have to look at engagement, which is about ensuring that there's a formal process of registering a volunteer, making sure that it's clear and implemented, and also creating a ceremony or ritual for new volunteers so that they feel that they're actually joining something. And then we have induction, which is about putting in place a standard volunteer induction process that can be implemented by all chapters, and at this point making sure that the new volunteer is included in a specific AFS function, and then linking each new volunteer with an existing volunteer so that they can be mentored and can learn through becoming involved in a specific activity. All of these stages are before we actually get to what the volunteer is going to be doing within AFS. Then we come to step 5, which is the doing. And we need to put in place processes to evaluate the training and support needs of volunteers and to deliver appropriate solutions to those needs. It's no good asking somebody to do an orientation or a host family interview without giving them the training and support that they need to be able to do that. But we also need to put in place a system to register the skills and experience of volunteers, so they can be offered experiences that allow them to grow personally and professionally. For example, if we have someone who's a graphics design student, then we should know that so we can talk to them and say, can you help us with the brochures? Would that be something which would be interesting to you? After a period of doing, then we have to look at retention. We don't want volunteers to come in, do a piece of work for us and then disappear. So we need to look at reviewing the broader possibilities beyond the support functions. For example, having volunteers being able to set up their own projects, becoming a change maker. Also, putting together different exchange programs like the Intra-Africa exchanges. We've got a Sour program starting in Egypt at the moment. These sorts of programs are the things that volunteers can then aspire to becoming involved with. Finally, we need to make sure that we don't just lose the people, that we recycle or renew their commitment to AFS. It's about formalising the volunteer journey in such a way that there's a clear picture of how the volunteer's life within AFS South Africa is able to progress. So if someone has been involved in welcoming exchange students within the community, do they now want to get involved in the gateway orientations? We also need to put in place a process by which their involvement can be assessed and efforts made to continue their involvement. So saying to them, what is it that you've done? What extra support do you need from us? What else do you want to do? And hopefully these efforts in recycling and renewing will then bring the person back into the do for another cycle. Then we have program development. There are 4 areas we're going to look at on program development. First of all, program quality, where we need to address the areas of quality that led to the reduced numbers in 2014. We've already started on that, and in the quality plan, we're also looking at how we continually work on improving program quality. On program rationalization, we need to make it more efficient the way that we're working. For example, at the moment, we have a range of different programs with different arrival dates and multiple arrival dates all at the same time. So we may have 3, 4, 5 arrivals during 1 month. So what we want to do is enable improved quality through reducing the number of different cycles and arrivals. So we can have larger groups that we can do different sorts of orientations with them rather than individual 1 or 2 people arriving. Then we're going to be looking at new programs. For example, we're looking at putting together a month-long language and culture program for next year. And then finally, Itero. All 18 plus programs will fall under Itero. Also, at the moment, South Africa is one of the 3 biggest hosters of 18 plus participants. So we want to build on that, but not just in the numbers. We also want to bring in the whole approach of change making, of having holistic programs across a chapter to actually deliver more on the ground and actually change things on the ground. And hopefully that will mean that South Africa is seen to be on the leading edge of the 18 plus programme. To do all of this, of course, we need funds. So we'll be looking at trying to develop strategic partnerships with particular organisations, for example, to get more money for sponsoring students or providing small grants for change-making projects. As we deliver these community-focused programs, we'll be able to demonstrate that we're actually having an impact on South African communities. And that will mean that we can approach new funders to look for more funding to support more innovative programs. And we're hoping that that will then be a cycle that continues to grow on itself, and the programs will continue to develop with funding from outside sources. Then finally, we have media and communications. First of all, we need to be planning what we're doing with our communications. We need to put in place a system where we're talking to ourselves and saying, what is it we want to say? Who are we talking to? What are we wanting to tell them? What is it we want to get out of them? Is it just about getting people to understand what our programs are around? Is it about getting new volunteers? Is it about getting funders? Is it about trying to develop links with other organisations? So what is the aim of the communication and how are we going to do it? Looking at 2 of the specifics of that, we need to look at the sorts of media we use, so making more effective use of the website, better use of media opportunities and the social media like Facebook or Twitter. And then on publications, producing engaging publications, but ones that are on brand so people can see straight away that that's an AFS publication. And all of that is aimed at two main changes. First of all, to increase the reach, increase the number of people who recognise the name AFS. And then secondly, to generate more interest, to increase the number of inquiries about and support for AFS from all different stakeholder groups. And the ultimate aim of all of this is a more just and peaceful South Africa. How are we going forward with this? Well, at the moment, a board member has been appointed for each of the 6 areas of work. And I'm going to be working closely with them and pulling in other stakeholders as required to finalise the plans before we go forward in each area. The final plans will then be approved and signed off by the board in December 2014. At the moment, we're also currently working on various things and planning to implement in the near future a number of initiatives that are designed to deliver quick wins in relation to changing the operations and profile of AFS in South Africa. We've been doing some training in continual improvement and how to use some of the quality tools, and a quality project to improve gateway orientations has been started, and the current process has been flowcharted. The quality team will be working on systems and procedures with a view to implementing changes for the February 2015 gateway. We have a process and template for stories of change, and it's currently being trialled with 18+ participants. An AFS Creating Change section of the website will be set up to share these stories, and the system will be rolled out to other groups by early 2015. A volunteer development strategy has been agreed and is key to growing our programs while improving quality at the same time. Early outcomes that we're being aimed for are a more proactive approach to planning for the 2015 programme, higher visibility for AFS in communities, and better relations with schools. A volunteer training plan is currently being finalised with more systematic approach to training volunteers, and we'll be looking at putting in place improved trainings on host family selection and support by January 2015. And also there's been a range of initiatives trying to raise the profile of AFS in the network with partners, from a programme newsletter, regular postings on the World Cafe, a presentation to partners at the World Congress, and planning for a partner study tour in Easter 2015. All of these quick wins will be publicised and used to demonstrate the systematic change in approach across AFS South Africa. So, how can you become involved? We're looking for volunteers who'd like to be involved in further developing the various plans and taking them forward. So, if you're interested, please contact me at dennis.lane@afs.org. Thank you for listening.